Dude, leave me alone.
Despite the recent release of this shocking video, Taylor Frankie Paul will not face charges out of Utah after estranged ex Dakota Mortensen pointed the finger at the so-called Mormon mom influencer. Now, both Taylor and Dakota are breaking their silence in the wake of a coming hearing for the custody of their 2-year-old son.
This is called physical abuse.
This is Scandal, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Gillespie. Well, the drama continues to mount in the case of Taylor Frankie Paul, the star of ABC's ill-fated season of The Bachelorette, canceled in the wake of Taylor's recent scandal. For the first time since the district attorney's office declined to press charges, we're hearing from all the major players, Taylor, Dakota, Utah attorneys, who explain why she isn't facing charges and whether she still could in the future. Meanwhile, we still haven't forgotten that newly resurfaced video, the one that was reportedly taken by Dakota amidst a fight in 2023, but was just hard launched on the internet by TMZ last month. You remember the one, it's kind of hard to forget.
This is called physical abuse.
Today's scandal takes us to Draper, Utah, the current home of 31-year-old Taylor Frankie Paul.
Hi guys, we are going to be prepping for my kids because for those of you that know, I'm a divorced parent, so I do like a prep day before my kids come for the weekend. I already have them because I got them a day earlier than I thought, so we are still going to go get groceries and prep for the weekend.
Taylor rose to fame on TikTok after saying her ex-husband, Tate Paul, filed for divorce when she broke the rules in their soft swinging relationship.
Did you sleep with him or just kiss him?
I slept with him.
Okay, fine.
Taylor first got a taste of fame through her TikTok, specifically touching on her lifestyle of that so-called Mormon swinging movement, if you want to call it that. Taylor's solo and group posts became so famous, she leveraged that internet fame into a reality TV series on Hulu. It's called The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and centers around Taylor and a group of her friends, made famous for that swinging scandal within the Mormon community. Season 1 of the show premiered on September 6th, 2024, and hit the ground running, discussing and even showing body camera recordings from this incident on February 17th, 2023.
I'm emotionally hurting. I'm not physically hurting. I'm emotionally hurting.
Okay.
While that body cam was recorded more than 3 years ago at this point, it's still pretty relevant to today's episode, so let me explain. On February 17th, 2023, Taylor and her estranged boyfriend, Dakota Mortensen, got into a fight. It got so bad that neighbors could actually hear them and called the police. I reported on the incident right here on Law&Crime when the initial body camera video was released back in May of 2023. Here's a clip from that video.
So let's start with this. How do you spell your first name?
T-Y-O-R.
Just go ahead and just focus on breathing for me.
Okay, go ahead.
So Taylor, right?
Yeah.
What's your last name?
Paul.
Have you had a little bit too much to drink tonight? I can smell the alcohol pretty strong.
Sure, but not anything crazy. I went out on a girls' night and I came home. Safe driving.
And for all of this, Taylor faced some pretty serious consequences.
There were a litany of charges that were filed. There was a reckless child abuse charge that was filed. That was ultimately dismissed as a part of a plea agreement.
Okay.
The plea agreement was a plea in abeyance that would take it from a third-degree felony aggravated assault to a Class A misdemeanor.
Taylor ended up taking a plea deal in August 2023. She pleaded guilty to the aggravated assault charge and the rest were dismissed. Her sentence was essentially probation, meaning she had to meet with a caseworker, undergo any sort of mandated treatment, and not use any drugs or alcohol. Now, this probation period was set to last until August 2026, and if she complied with all these directions and didn't get in any more trouble, her felony would be reduced to a Class A misdemeanor. And this became really important in the wake of recent events, which I'll get to in a minute, but first, the new video. As I said, back in 2023, we got that initial body cam, but that was pretty much it. It was pretty limited. You can see here, as soon as the officer goes inside, the video just goes black.
Can I get a drink, please? Please?
Can you promise not to talk to him while we go in there?
Sure.
I just don't want anything escalating to an argument or fight while we go in there. Okay? Okay, let's go.
So for years, no one really knew what happened inside of the home. That is until last month.
Yeah, look at you. Look. Hon, you think this is okay? It's not okay.
TMZ first released this video on March 19th. It's from that February 2023 incident, but just became public this year. And the reason it became public is because of a recent filing made by Dakota. In this filing, Dakota pointed to 2 separate incidents that allegedly occurred in Draper City, Utah back in February of this year. And I'll let the attorneys explain what happened.
The events, as my client understands it, took place the very early morning hours, about 6 a.m. or so of Sunday, February 22nd, and then the following day after midnight on the 23rd. So 2 separate incidents, 2 separate interactions. And I'm looking at, for purposes of today, I'm looking at the 23rd, or what I call the truck tussle. Essentially, both parties allege that they were having, that Dakota came over to Taylor's house. So essentially, they've had obviously a tumultuous relationship, and there's been a very well documented history of Dakota trying to re-engage and re-enter and resume the relationship. And one such example took place on February 23rd of this year, early morning hours, soon after midnight.
Before the violent episode, right? Before the incident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is that incident, the truck tussle. So kids are sleeping inside, the 3 children that my client has, 2 with her ex-husband and 1 with Mr. Mortensen. They're sleeping inside her home in Draper. Mr. Mortensen comes over, and my client decides, fine.
Why did he come over?
Talk about the relationship.
Not to pick up the kids? It wasn't his turn?
No,
to
middle
have
of the
kids
night. It wasn't related to
invited
the
over,
children.
or did he just show up with unannounced?
I think it was by invitation. In other words, she acquiesced to his coming over.
Okay, all right.
Kids are sleeping. She doesn't want it to escalate and turn into an argument. So she says, fine, I'll talk, but let's do it in your truck. So they go in and they sit in the front seat of the truck, and things immediately start to escalate. He drives away with her in the truck against her objection. And then something happens. Okay. I say something because this is where there's a huge divergence in the stories. You've read the request for protective orders supplied by Mr. Mortensen. He says, Taylor went crazy and she threw a drink, and I don't know. She assaulted him, essentially at its core. Taylor alleges that he grabbed her head during the course of this argument and slammed it into the dashboard, and in the ensuing chaos also struck with his fist her knee and her elbow. In that binder in front of you, Your Honor, you'll see exhibits E and F. E shows the progression of a bruise on her forehead that she took.
Kind of yellowish in the picture.
Gets yellow. Yeah. The first one was taken hours after the incident, so not really yellow, but it's discolored. There's a bump. And then the additional pictures within that exhibit show the progression of the color changes of the bruise. Exhibit F shows something similar. It's a bruise on her knee from when he struck her in the truck. My client would testify
Who
that
took the photos? What's the foundation?
my client took the photos.
On the day of the incident?
The first one was taken, I believe, within hours. So think under 10 hours or so after the incident when the bruise formed.
That was a soundbite from Taylor's attorney at a recent custody hearing. Taylor's team argued that at the time of this truck tussle, Taylor separated herself from Dakota and even asked him to leave the property. But in Dakota's protective order filing back in March, he cited this incident as an alleged pattern of abuse at the hands of Taylor and included the February 2023 cell phone video as alleged proof of this pattern. And by the way, we now have more body camera video from inside the home from that 2023 incident too.
I mean, I think my finger's broken, dude. Like, my I don't know. Is there a bump there?
And that video even shows what leads up to Taylor's arrest.
Well, the hard part is that, like, I'm getting 2 different stories.
Okay.
As far as tonight's concerned, based on what I've seen and what's taken place, at this time you're going to be placed under arrest for DV, for domestic violence. Okay? So before I talk to you more about it, I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back.
So is he not at all?
Not tonight, no.
I'm confused. So he pushed me and I'm under arrest? Why?
I can talk to you more about
Okay,
it.
that's fine, but I'm just curious why. I'm going to do am I allowed to talk or not?
Yeah, you can. Just give me a second.
So I'm going to do myself, so why am I under arrest? So you're going against his word against mine, correct?
It's based on the evidence that I'm seeing at the, here tonight.
What's your evidence? Just curious.
Just all the stuff on the ground and you throwing things at him and all that.
Are we allowed to ask him, or is that not allowed? Because
What do you mean by asking?
Because when he sees this, he's not going to agree to it.
Airman 4482, one female. Let's walk to my car.
I'm allowed to ask questions? Or
Yes,
not?
you can.
Okay, so can we ask him?
Yeah, I did. I did talk to him, and I told him how tonight was going to go. And
So that's fine.
he understood. He was very, upset about it. But
What is he upset about? So I'm curious how I pissed my pants tonight and I'm getting under arrest, I guess. Can you help me with that?
part of that could be. There's a lot of factors about that.
What is it?
But the main thing.
Can I see my mom and dad? And him?
If you
Please?
want, I just don't want to traumatize your kids.
Okay,
that's
my
my
kids
biggest
are
concern.
asleep, so can we talk to
No,
them?
your daughter's in the living room.
Can I talk to Dakota then?
That's probably not a good idea, because I don't want you guys to argue.
Sure. Can I ask him what? I'm confused how I'm being arrested, though. Is that him in his truck right here? This is
Yeah,
his
we're
truck.
not talking to him.
Okay.
She wants to talk to her
Dakota,
parents real
in
quick.
the truck.
You're not talking to him
I'm
tonight.
being arrested, I guess, for pushing Dakota.
Well, yeah, that's domestic violence.
He pushed me too into that one thing right there.
Is there, okay, as far as, I don't want you guys talking about the
Oh,
case,
what?
but is there anything that you can talk to them about the kids? Taking care of them, anything like that?
I guess no.
Do you have your phone on you?
Her phone isn't here on the table.
Have it.
Okay.
Or am I good to let them in to start?
Do you have proceeds?
Yes.
Why am I not allowed to talk to Dakota? This is about him.
Because objectively speaking, he's a victim.
Sure, but he
You're a
pushed me
suspect.
too when I'm a girl.
Right, and that you'll have your time in court to talk about those things.
Okay.
But as far as tonight goes,
Who pushed you first?
I don't know. I'm sure I pushed him, but he pushed me to that one thing. Okay, sorry. Can I please just talk to him at all?
no, because what's going to happen is you're not going to be allowed to talk to him at all until a court or a judge looks at the case.
But can we talk about it at all with him? He's the one who pushed me. I don't understand how this is even illegal.
Okay, go this way.
Even if he wants to, I can't talk to him?
Correct.
Okay.
Because there's going to be it's called a jail release agreement,
Okay.
and you're not going to be allowed to talk to him until
Okay.
after a judge looks at the case.
Oh, yeah. You're good.
Hold on.
So because I
Go ahead
pushed
and
him
step in.
first, I go to jail.
That's one factor in the whole case.
And he wants me to go to jail?
No, he doesn't want to, but Utah requires me to make an arrest when I can sense that, or when I can tell that violence is taking place.
Because I pushed him, And he pushed me?
That's part of it.
Okay. I know I've blocked the middle.
No.
Okay.
Not until after your
Okay.
work.
You're good.
Once again, all of this happened back in 2023, but it's got a renewed interest because after Dakota made his recent protective order filing, TMZ released that cell phone video, and then Taylor's season of The Bachelorette was completely canceled. And this was unprecedented. I mean, this is a top-rated show. It was already filmed, it was already edited, ready to hit air just a few days later when ABC pulls the plug. Now, at the time, Taylor alleged that Dakota was acting in a calculated way to ruin her moment and maybe even affect her future income. They were set to meet up in court on April 7th for a custody hearing after Dakota had filed his protective order, and that hearing did happen. But Taylor also filed a protective order against Dakota in the final hours before that hearing. Taylor's team pointed to that 2023 argument between Dakota and Taylor, saying, why now is Dakota bringing up this alleged pattern of abuse? His proof of this comes from a video from 2023 in which Taylor has already been convicted. It's already been all sorted out. Taylor's team argued it's really Dakota who is the aggressor and that Taylor is the victim, and the kids are just caught in the middle.
The reason I bring this up is Dakota pushes buttons. He's excellent at that. As long as these folks stay apart, which I think is fully stipulated, they need to stay apart. I don't think there's any risk of them coming together again in the aftermath of this. Then there is no risk to the child. No one's going to come into my client's house, whip out their phone and, and test her, push her buttons and refuse to leave. Not to mention the other allegations she's made about full-on domestic violence against her.
All of this leads to the newest information, the fact that charges will not be filed against Taylor for the recent alleged incidents between her and Dakota. And now both she and Dakota have broken their silence. Just this month, the office of the Salt Lake County District Attorney announced charges are not going to be filed. They released a statement that reads, quote, "The complainant in these cases reported several incidents, some of which occurred more than 3 years ago. Any incidents of misdemeanor offenses which are alleged to have occurred more than 2 years ago are barred by the statute of limitations. Incidents which are alleged to have occurred within the statute of limitations have also been reviewed. Several incidents that were submitted do not rise to the level of criminal offenses. The remaining incidents lack sufficient evidence to support filing criminal charges, where the state must be able to prove such allegations beyond a reasonable doubt." So that's a big win for Taylor. How she replied to all of this? Well, posting to social media, of course. She posted to her grid, writing, quote, "Here come the ugly parts of what healing actually looks like. If you know me, you know I'll admit my parts, flaws, and faults. I'm well aware that's a part of it. We'll get there. This public atrocity that I not only lived through once, but twice now, on an even bigger scale, was ultimately the cost to my freedom. I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemy or even the ones who publicized it. I cried on my knees in pain while also saying thank you, prayer hands emoji. We have a road ahead, but regardless, I'm forever freed from a certain living hell I couldn't find my way out of. Metaphorically, someone witnessed me bleeding out and poured salt all over me. Somehow I'm still here, as we can see barely, because I believe God held me through and sent help, plus an army, which makes me cry because thank you to all of you that supported even without full context, prayer hands emoji. God undoubtedly had a hand in this because after waiting 7 weeks, on the 7th day exactly, I received the call, all charges dropped. Those are his numbers symbolic for his plans, which I'm nervous to see what's in store. Steps moving forward are the very basics. We're working on eating, movement, rest, and retraining the nervous system. I'll be sharing the process because if my worst is shared, better bet I'm sharing the rebuilding too. Taylor gave us more insight with posts in her stories too, where she revealed a diagnosis. She said, quote, "I was diagnosed with PTSD about 2 years ago, which I assume is now CPTSD, meaning complex post-traumatic stress disorder, by more than one therapist for all those that assumed diagnoses." She shared another post in her stories writing, quote, "Me behind almost every picture, award, or event. How many of us are masters of smiling through it? I cry a lot, and high chance someone next to you does this and you have no idea. I just want to heal so I can try and help people in this." And we'll talk more about this during the interview, but first I do want to note Dakota's statement because he too has broken his silence. In a statement to The Independent, Dakota said, "I've taken a step back and had time away from the chaos. My focus now is where it should have been all along, on my son and creating a stable, healthy environment for moving forward." He went on to say, quote, "I regret not stepping away from a difficult cycle sooner. At the same time, I don't agree with how this situation has been portrayed publicly. It does not reflect the full context of what occurred or the impact it has had on me and my son. I've chosen to step away from the spotlight to focus on my family, my growth, and our healing, and that's where my energy will remain." Well, it gets really tricky when custody arrangements are involved, and we've got some abuse allegations here too. I mean, all of it is just pretty messy, but I want to take a deeper dive into all of the drama by bringing on today's guest. It's criminal defense attorney Sky Lazaro out of Utah, where kind of all of this happened. So Sky, thanks for coming on Scandal with us. And let me start by asking, why do you think there will be no charges against Taylor Frankie Paul?
I think the DA's office probably looked at this. They probably looked at the age of the charges. And a lot of times in these domestic violence cases where you have one person accusing one of something and the other person accusing the other person back, you know, the options are we can charge both of them or, you know, maybe we don't charge anybody. I think they also take into consideration, you know, is the person going to participate in the prosecution? If they don't participate, will I have enough evidence to see this case through trial? So, you know, they really kind of look at all of those things and deciding whether or not to file formal charges or not.
I think these things get really sticky, especially when we have domestic violence allegations, a couple or estranged couple, and then when kids get involved, when there's custody disputes, you know, who is the child going to live with, it makes things even more difficult. And as you said, it's kind of a huge he said, she said type of situation. If there isn't video, if we don't have DNA, if there's nothing like that, it's just her word against his. So do you think prosecutors kind of considered all that and said, you know what, it might be better for the kid if we don't file charges, we just kind of separate and let the courts handle the custody side of things?
I think that's likely. You know, they certainly can file cases. We see a lot of sex assault cases that are really just a he said, she said, right? And we see those get filed, and domestic violence cases. It's hard to say what the prosecutors actually, you know, the conversations that were had and what they saw that we haven't seen. I know there's been some videos that, you know, have been produced, but you have to remember we have a statute of limitations in Utah on misdemeanor offenses. And so if these are, you know, more than a year or so old, then they can't file them. So they have to, looking at these most recent ones, they're probably looking at, okay, you know, what can we prove? Who's going to participate in this? The prosecutor's office should not take into consideration whether or not there's a civil action. What they should be considering is, can we prove the charges? If we charge this, is there a reasonable likelihood that we can prevail at trial? That really needs to be their consideration. I think in the back of your mind, you can think, yes, there's a civil action going on that protects the kids. There's a guardian ad litem, or there's protective orders in place, you know, to make sure that the kids are safe. I think that is an important piece of it. But I don't think that that's something that prosecutors really should take into consideration when they're looking at criminal charges.
You brought up something huge here, which is the statute of limitations. And we actually have the statement from the DA's office in Salt Lake City saying, you know, a couple of these incidents are longer ago, you know, they're exceeding the statute of limitations. And that's something that Taylor Frankie Paul herself has pointed to. So all of this drama that we're talking about kind of dates back to 2023 when she actually was convicted. She took a plea deal. And now in 2026, this spring, back in March, that video from inside the home was leaked to TMZ. It kind of made waves all over the country. She lost her deal on ABC. They canceled The Bachelorette. All of that kind of happened. And when it did, she pointed the finger at her estranged ex, Dakota, and said, this is very calculated. You're filing this now in 2026, showing a video from 2023. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Just your opinion. Do you think that it was a calculated move to file it then?
I mean, we never know what's in anybody's mind at the time, but I will say that, you know, the timing of it is fairly suspect, especially because this was so old. This this is an incident that had been dealt with. Everybody knew about it. Her agents knew about it. You know, her colleagues knew about it. They talked about it, you know, on the Mormon Wives show. You know, so this wasn't a secret. It wasn't like something that she'd hidden and lied to people about or something along those lines. So I do think, you know, that video, you know, was bad. You know, it really was. It did not show her in a good light. You know, her child was in the room and got hit. And, you know, it was really sad. I'm hopeful that, you know, through the course of taking the plea and, you know, whatever treatment or whatever she had to do with it, she's kind of moved past this. So who knows what these most recent incidents are, because, you know, we don't have a video like that of it. And to drag something up that she's already been punished for, that was years ago, I think is pretty harsh measure.
I think it's difficult, right? Because you pointed out so many of us have seen the video now, and it's difficult to watch, to hear that her daughter was injured with a metal stool in the situation. Not a good look for her. I mean, terrible, scary for any kids to be involved in. But at the same time, as you pointed out, this was 3 years ago at this point. She's already been convicted. She kind of went through with the plea deal. She hasn't skirted around it. She's been very straightforward and open about it. She's also talked about, you know, therapy and moving past and all of those things. So if she had this one conviction, can we hold it against her for the rest of time? I mean, I guess ABC eventually did, because her show was pulled. And that's one of my questions too in all of this. Do you think there could be any sort of civil lawsuit with this? The fact that the entire show, the series, or the season rather, had been shot, The Bachelorette was good to go, edited, ready to premiere, and then all of a sudden they pull the plug. Is there any sort of litigation that can be involved with all of that?
Well, I would expect she's probably going to have some litigation filed against her. I think that's a good possibility, given, you know, these other people who are involved and contestants on the show, and, you know, ABC themselves may come after her. You know, I think that remains to be seen. Now, whether or not she has any recourse against her estranged ex-husband, I think is an interesting question. Potentially, yes. You know, there could be some tortious interference or something like that. I don't know that she'd be able to file something like a defamation claim, because the defense to defamation is the truth, and because she took responsibility for that incident, she can't then come back and say, you know, you're using this to harm me and whatnot. But I do expect there will probably be some ongoing civil litigation, you know, as it relates to this fallout between canceled seasons and contracts that weren't upheld, and, you know, how she's going to deal with this with, you know, her estranged ex. Whether I would assume she'd probably countersue if they come after her.
Yeah, there's a lot of money involved in all of this, right? Because she was going to be on this huge season of The Bachelorette on ABC. Then she has this huge show on Hulu, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, that has now been put on pause. The filming is kind of in limbo at this point, and that's where her livelihood comes from. You know, she is this public figure. That's her job, essentially, is to appear on these shows. So now what's going to happen with that? And I mean, it's tricky. We can kind of see both sides, right? Because this happened in 2023. Okay, it's in the past. She's been convicted, whatever. However, she's technically still on probation for this until August of 2026. Right. So this is my next question to you. I know that the Salt Lake City County DA's office said, okay, we're not going to file charges here. But if something else happened, because in the past, I hate to point to the pattern, but we have seen kind of volatile actions between her and Dakota. If something popped up again, she's arrested again. This is speculation, but let's just say she's arrested again before August of this year. What would that mean then for her being on probation still from this previous conviction?
That's a really great question. So she's on probation. So the court can bring, or the prosecutor's office can bring, what's called an order to show cause, where she has violated the terms of her probation, because one of them is usually, and, you know, no further violations of the law. There are usually some alcohol and drug prohibitions on it, treatment prohibitions, those types of things. Even though she has not been charged with this, you can still violate your probation without criminal charges. So, you know, her sentencing judge could look at it and say, all right, they're not filing charges against you, but, you know, she's entitled to an evidentiary hearing, first of all. They can't just say, look, you screwed up, we're going to throw the book at you. So she's entitled to an evidentiary hearing on this, but it's a lower burden of proof. It's only preponderance of the evidence. So it's, more likely than not, instead of beyond a reasonable doubt, if she'd been charged with a new crime. So they can look at this and say, your behavior violated whatever terms that were in place of your sentence, and have a hearing on it. And it's just before the judge. And if the judge decides that, yes, the state has proven that you violated your probation, he can sanction her. He can take away, I think this might have been a plea in abeyance deal.
Mm-hmm.
She could lose the plea in abeyance and end up with an actual conviction on her record. And so there are things in that, and where there was a protective order that was put in place, right, at least initially, the judge may look at that and say, hey, look, there's some behavior here that I'm concerned about. And if the prosecutor chooses to go down that road, then yes, that she could have some consequences and some sanctions on that 2023 case.
Wow. See, I didn't even think about all of that. I thought, okay, if she's convicted again or arrested again or charged again, okay, yes, obviously that's huge violation of, her probation here. But the way that you're pointing it out, maybe they take another look at it, because, okay, you also mentioned the protective orders, and this is interesting. So the reason that we have this video at all, the cell phone video, from 2023, is because Dakota filed a protective order against Taylor on March 19th. He submitted this as a pattern of abuse, quote unquote. TMZ got the video, and then it kind of went viral. Here we are today. But Taylor filed another protective order against Dakota too. So they kind of have competing protective orders against each other. How is all of that considered?
And those were temporary orders initially. So the way that those are submitted in Utah is they're submitted what we call ex parte. So it's just before the judge initially. If somebody needs a protective order. And I would say most of the time when a judge gets one of those and someone's alleging a pattern of abuse, they're going to err on the side of caution and say, okay, I'm going to enter this temporary order because there's something going on here. And we've been seeing a lot of tragic homicide, murder, suicide cases recently in Utah that arise out of domestic violence situations. And so I think they err on the side of caution and say, okay, we're gonna put this temporary order in place, and then the other person's entitled to a hearing within a very short period of time. So then they can have the hearing, and then the judge can get both sides and say, okay, do I actually need a protective order? Because they last for 3 years here in Utah. So do we actually need to impose it, or does it not rise to the level under the statute of what's required?
Oh, okay. So there's, when you're going through and answering this, I'm thinking through so many different things, because she could face charges, maybe, question mark. That's another thing, what's going to happen with her plea deal? What about her custody? What about, and you even mentioned that in the past in Utah, and we've seen this all over the country, where there's, intimate partner violence, where it's either verbal, physical. Sometimes we cover cases here on Scandal where there was murder involved. These are really scary situations that have to be taken seriously. So I'm glad that the court is doing that, but they have to consider kind of the bigger picture and everything that's going on here. There's just kind of a lot to think about. And I guess the bottom line here, she is a public figure. So we're able to kind of follow her not only on the show, but on social media. And recently, just this weekend, she kind of addressed everything, broke her silence, so to speak, about everything that happened, and said that she's been diagnosed with CPTSD. So what about her mental health diagnoses? I know she has depression or anxiety, might also be kind of mixed in there too. Would any of this stuff be considered in regards to, custody or the future of her probation, all of that? Would that at least be considered?
I think it will be considered. It's not a defense to any criminal activity or violation of civil orders or anything like that. But I think it's important. We see a lot of mental health issues in the legal context, right? Surrounding custody issues, surrounding criminal cases. And it is very important that judges and prosecutors and defense attorneys are aware of it, because it does need to be factored in. And so a lot of times what we'll see in criminal cases is, staying compliant with your doctor and your medication while you're in treatment, whatever it is that you need to be doing while you're on probation, generally becomes, or a lot of times becomes, part of their sentencing agreement or their sentencing conditions. So the court's hopeful, look, get a handle. We understand people make mistakes, right? And mental health plays a huge role in that a lot of times, but what we want you to do is be taking steps to get better along the way and to address this so that we don't end up back in this place. And that's kind of on the criminal side. On the civil side, when we're talking about children, the court's interest in that is always going to be what is in the best interest of the children. Every decision that's made in a custody context, the court really needs to come back to, and there's a number of factors involved in this that the court can consider, things that, can be harmful to one person or the other. But at the end of the day, really what it is what's in the best interest of the kids. What keeps these kids safe, stable, and in the best position that they can be in. So I would expect that that court is also going to look at, any mental health diagnosis and say the same thing. You need to stay compliant with your doctor. You need to get, any treatment or therapy or anything like that is going to help you. If you're on any medication, you need to stay compliant and take it as prescribed. And so I would expect we're going to see it on that side too, especially because the civil court that deals with the custody has a lot more latitude. Criminal, in the criminal world, it's, did somebody do it? Have they been convicted? And we only have them for a short period of time, although she has been on probation for a long time in this case. So, I don't know if they're going to keep her on, they could keep her on probation. They could revoke and restart it, right? Oh. And keep her on probation even longer. So, I guess we'll see what happens there. But on the custody side, those judges, they can order testing. They can say, look, you've got if you have an alcohol problem, you got to go test before you pick your kids up, or you have to have an interlock in your car, or, they can really kind of go outside the box to make sure that, if they're giving somebody their children for parent time, and that's what the statute favors and should, but they want to make sure that they can put in whatever safeguards are necessary to make sure that those kids are safe.
Yeah, and I do think that the judges in that case would say, okay, let's say you started therapy immediately after this incident, after you were arrested, and you've been doing it consistently, or you've been on, prescription medication since then. These are all positive things that I feel like the judge in the court would probably weigh, right, too. I mean, she has made a mistake in the past, but if she's making positive steps, would they consider all that too?
Absolutely, and it's actually going to be very favorable to her. So, just because this happened 3 years ago, and nothing's happened since. She got a handle on it. She went to the doctor. She got a diagnosis. She's done therapy. She continues to do therapy. They're really going to commend her for that, honestly, more than they're not going to go back and say, well, you were a bad person in 2023, so you still are. They're going to say, hey, look, you made a mistake, but you have done all this. I would expect, both the criminal side and probably the civil side, if she's not having the same types of problems, and this video really was just used to blast her at a really inopportune time, that they're going to commend her for all of the work that she's done, because this stuff's hard. Anybody who's dealt with either an addiction or mental health issues or anything else, it's hard by itself. To get through, and then you add the legal component and somebody looking over your shoulder and all of this stuff too. It's really difficult. And so when people really buckle down and take the initiative to deal with these issues and get better, I think they should be commended for it.
Yeah. I agree with you too. If we're seeing positive changes here, I just hope for the best. I mean, for the kids, that's really the bottom line too. And I know that there's a custody hearing coming up, so we're going to make sure to follow that and see what's ahead. For today, Sky Lazaro, thanks for coming on Scandal and chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
Taylor Frankie Paul is due back in court later this month. We'll be there and we'll bring you the latest updates as they happen. And that is where today's episode of Scandal leaves us for now. If you like what you saw and you want to see more or connect with me on social media, you can find me on places like Instagram at Sierra Gillespie. Thanks for watching today's episode of Scandal. As always, I'm your host, Sierra Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.